They laughed when she entered the boardroom. Not loudly, not directly, but the kind of laughter that hides behind fake coughs and smirking glances. She wore no power suit, no expensive heels, just a clean white blouse, flats, and a folder of carefully prepared notes. "Executive assistant," one man whispered. "Coffee intern," another muttered. She heard it, every word, every laugh, but she said nothing. She took a seat at the edge of the table, not at the head, not even near it, and waited. This was supposed to be an open strategy session, a chance for outside voices to contribute ideas. But from the moment she sat down, it was clear no one in the room took her seriously. She wasn't polished enough. She wasn't loud enough. And she certainly didn't look like someone worth listening to. By the time she offered her first suggestion, they barely let her finish before moving on. When she finally stood to leave, one executive shook his head and chuckled. "Maybe stick to HR meetings next time." She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself, because she knew something they didn't. The man who owned the company, the one they answered to, was her husband, and the next time they saw her, she wouldn't be in the corner of the room, she'd be leading it. Her name was Alina Qureshi, measured, thoughtful, and never in a rush to be noticed. She didn't come from a corporate background. She didn't graduate from an Ivy League school or intern at a Fortune 500 company. Her career started in classrooms, community centers, and grassroots organizations, places where real problems were solved with empathy, not ego. She had spent a decade working in nonprofit development, quietly leading campaigns that improved lives without needing headlines. Strategy came naturally to her, but spotlight? Not her thing. Her husband, Omar Qureshi, was different. A former startup founder turned global investor, he had built a business empire across fintech, clean energy, and infrastructure. He was the visionary. She was the architect who helped him ground that vision in reality. But to the board members at Qureshi Global Ventures, Alina was just his wife, someone they'd occasionally seen at galas or charitable events, someone warm and unassuming, and therefore, in their minds, harmless. They had invited her to sit in on a quarterly strategy session at Omar's suggestion. "She's got a fresh perspective," he had told them. But from the moment she walked into the boardroom, she felt it. The glances, the dismissals, the subtle rejection cloaked in politeness. They assumed she was there for decoration, not direction. Alina didn't try to impress them with big language or forceful opinions. She spoke when asked, offered 2 ideas grounded in data and real-world outcomes, and was promptly talked over, dismissed, and patronized. After the meeting, one executive even had the nerve to hand her a notepad and say, "Next time, print your talking points. It helps when you're new." She simply smiled, thanked him, and left. What they didn't know? Omar had been watching the entire meeting from the observation room. He had heard everything. And while Alina remained silent, he was already making calls, not in anger, but in certainty, because he knew what the board didn't. Alina didn't just belong in that room, she deserved to run it. 3 days after the meeting, the boardroom buzzed with self-congratulation. The executives had dismissed Alina's ideas, replaced her strategy notes with another market expansion plan, and sent a follow-up memo to Omar outlining their refined vision for the next fiscal year. Not one of them mentioned her contribution. Not one of them realized how much she had already built behind the scenes, advising on community-based partnerships, streamlining logistics, and helping Omar avoid a disastrous merger last quarter. Instead, they laughed. "She meant well," said one executive, leaning back with his espresso. "But this isn't a charity foundation, it's a global venture firm." Another added, "She's smart, for someone with no boardroom experience." One of them even joked, "Maybe she should run the wellness committee. They meet once a month and bring muffins." No one objected. Until the next morning, when a company-wide email went out, marked as urgent. From the Office of the Chief Executive Officer. Effective immediately, a new chairperson of the board has been appointed. Please extend full cooperation and support as she assumes her new role. Below the message was a name they never expected, Alina Qureshi. The boardroom fell into chaos. She's... What? Is this a joke? Did Omar sign off on this? They didn't have to wonder long. At precisely 10 a.m., the glass doors opened. Alina stepped in, not flanked by lawyers, not with security, not with fanfare. Just herself. Calm, professional, fully in control. Behind her walked Omar. Silent, supportive, with a slight smile that said everything. Alina sat at the head of the table, the same one she had been pushed to the side of just days ago. "Let's begin," she said, opening her folder. A few board members still couldn't process it. "Alina," one began cautiously, "I think there may have been some confusion. This role requires extensive financial and operational—" She raised her hand gently. "Let me stop you right there." Her tone was polite, her expression firm. "You've all made it very clear that I don't fit your mold," she said, eyes scanning the room. "But let me tell you what I've done." She placed a binder on the table. "This is the breakdown of how I personally saved this company $18 million last year in failed regional expansion plans, the same ones you endorsed." She opened another folder. "And this is how my outreach work secured a multi-country partnership that increased our impact footprint by 63%, without costing us a single marketing dollar." They stared at her, stunned, silent, and visibly embarrassed. "I didn't come here to prove myself," she added. "I came here to lead." And in that moment they all realized. The woman they mocked out of the boardroom was now the one deciding who stayed in it. The tension in the boardroom was thick. No one moved, no one spoke. Every ego that had once scoffed at Alina now sat frozen, waiting to see what would happen next. But Alina didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply leaned forward, rested her hands on the table, and said, "Let's talk about what leadership actually looks like." She clicked a remote, and the large screen behind her lit up with a presentation titled Qureshi Global, Rethinking Influence, Impact, and Inclusion. "This is not about replacing strategy," she began, "but about correcting blind spots, the kind that cost companies billions and cultures everything." Slide after slide, she laid out a plan that wasn't just visionary, it was grounded. Specific data, people-focused design, scalable growth across markets the board had previously deemed non-essential. She wasn't guessing. She had done the work. Quietly, consistently, for years. And now she had the authority to make it official. One board member, clearly still processing, raised a hand. "Why didn't you say anything before?" Alina looked at him steady. "Because I was still deciding if this was a board worth speaking to. No arrogance, just truth." Another leaned forward. "And Omar supports all of this?" From the far end of the room, Omar finally spoke, his voice calm but absolute. "I didn't appoint Alina because she's my wife," he said. "I appointed her because she's been outperforming all of us, including me, for years. I just thought it was time the rest of you noticed." He paused, then added, "And yes, every word of this plan has my full support." There was no room left for doubt. Alina continued. She outlined key changes, restructuring the leadership development program, increasing funding for local entrepreneurship initiatives, shifting from vanity acquisitions to sustainable partnerships. And then she delivered the sentence that stuck with them all. "If we're going to be a global company, we need a global perspective. And that starts with listening to voices you've been too comfortable ignoring." No one laughed now, they just listened. Because for the first time in a long time, someone at the head of that table wasn't speaking from ego or fear, but from clarity, from conviction, from experience they hadn't seen coming. When the meeting ended, no one rushed out. A few stayed behind to shake her hand. Some avoided her eyes. One even muttered an apology. But none of it mattered to Alina. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here to lead. And as she walked out of the boardroom, this time through the main doors and not the side entrance, there was no need to look back. The seat at the head of the table wasn't borrowed. It was hers now. Weeks passed. The board adjusted. And quietly, so did the company. Initiatives that had been stalled for years were suddenly moving. Team morale rose. Mid-level managers, especially women and underrepresented voices, began to speak up more, because now someone at the top actually listened. Alina didn't lead by dominance. She led by clarity, by asking better questions, by expecting better answers. And people responded. Those who had once rolled their eyes at her were now the first to take notes in meetings. The executive who had handed her a notepad as a joke. He now requested private sessions to understand her regional strategy, but Alina never gloated. She never reminded them of their past dismissals. Because she wasn't there to prove herself anymore. She had already done that. She was there to reshape something bigger, the culture of who gets to be heard. One afternoon, after a major partnership deal was finalized, one Alina had quietly built from her nonprofit connections, a junior analyst knocked on her door. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, "for making this place feel like it belongs to more than just a few." Alina smiled, closed her laptop, and replied, "It always did. It just needed someone to open the door a little wider." And in that moment, the title Chairwoman meant more than any corner office or executive power. It meant she had changed the room, not by raising her voice, but by raising the standard. Alina never demanded respect. She didn't storm out. She didn't shout to be heard. She simply waited until the moment was hers. And when it was, she didn't use it to punish. She used it to lead. Have you ever been laughed at or overlooked, only to return stronger and change the story entirely? Or maybe you've seen someone rise from silence to leadership, with grace instead of revenge. Tell us in the comments. Your quiet victory could inspire someone else to stay patient and stay powerful. If this story moved you, subscribe, hit the bell, and stick around. We tell stories for people who are often ignored, until they're the ones writing the next chapter. And remember, you don't have to be loud to lead. You don't have to be flashy to be powerful. And you never have to shrink just because they can't see your strength yet. The seat at the table? It's yours. Not when they say so, but when you're ready to take it. Until next time, stay steady, stay smart, and never forget, some people walk in quietly, only to leave as the one in charge.